Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel and to my Portugal 2-week budget breakdown video. So in this video I will talk about exactly how much I spent on my 2-week trip in Portugal in September 2022. So in this video I will be talking about how expensive it is to travel to Portugal, how much you can expect to be spending there, and how you can also decrease your costs so you can spend less on your trip to Portugal. For your information, I have not included flights in these costs because that totally depends on where you're flying from. If you're flying from the States, for example, it's gonna be much more expensive than if you're flying from within Europe. So for example, I flew from Finland to Portugal and then back to Finland, so that was pretty inexpensive if we compare to other destinations. But for the purpose of this video, I have made Google Sheets, which I have here on my laptop, and you can see it because I will be sharing my screen here. I wanted to start off with going through the daily total spends of each day, and then go more in depth of each category, like how much I spent for each category. So usually when I do these budget breakdown videos when it comes to travel, I like to separate my spendings into 4 categories, which is transportation, accommodation, food and drinks, and activities. So yeah, I have my laptop here, I have my Google Sheets open here, and I'm gonna go through what I spent or how much I spent on my trip to Portugal. Another note that I want to say is that I usually like to watch my budget a bit. I'm not the most budget friendly traveler, but I'm definitely not the high-end traveler. So for example, in Portugal I chose to move from a city to another using Flixbus, which is cheap and really good in my opinion. I also chose to stay at hostels when I had to choose accommodation. And also when it comes to food, I like good food, let's just say that, but I do like to keep my budget somehow on a lower level, so I do watch out for the prices and choose to eat at good but a bit more less expensive places. So me and my friend Vera, we flew from Helsinki, Finland to Faro, Portugal. There we took the train to Lagos, which is where we spent the first week of our trip, or my trip, because we chose to do a 1-week surf camp, which is the whole reason we chose to go to Portugal in the first place. So the surf camp was with the Surf Experience, and it was a 1-week surf camp which was 508 euros in total. This included lunch, accommodation, breakfast, gear rental, surf classes, daily surf classes for the week, and also transportation from the surf camp accommodation to the beaches that we went to. So 508 euros in total for a week. For all that, that's I think that's quite affordable. So that ends up to 72 euros and 80 cents a day for the week. So here during the first day we arrived in Faro pretty late, and then we took the train to Lagos, and the total spend of the day with the surf camp included was 92 euros and 30 cents. So here you can see on the yellow here, the first 7 days we spent in Lagos on our surf camp, which meant that we didn't need to spend a lot of money on food, for example, or breakfast or accommodation, and we got transportation and everything like that. The only thing we did need to spend money on was if we wanted to do some shopping, for example, or buy some snacks, or dinner. Of course we needed to eat dinner, so that was something that we needed to spend money on, but otherwise everything was paid for. Yeah, then the first 7 days we spent in Lagos, and on the second day about 107 euros, 109 and 60, 99, 60, 145, 55, 85, 60, and 107 and 10. Overall, during the 2 weeks I spent in Portugal, I spent a total of 1,338 euros and 32 cents, which averaged to a daily spend of 89 and 22. But now let's see like the first week in the categories here. As you can see, on the first day, the only thing we actually like purchased, other than, well, the transportation, which was the train ticket and a taxi fare. Otherwise, we spent only 7 euros 20 cents for food, and that was when we arrived in Faro before we catched our train to Lagos. And the food we had was like a steak with some fries and beer, and that was 7 euros 20. That's pretty cheap. So a whole meal, and I think we even had some like olives for appetizers. So yeah, it was a small restaurant, like I think it was like a family-owned restaurant close to the Faro train station, so very affordable. So yeah, you can see that like on a daily average was like a 30 euros for food and drinks. That usually included either like a dinner with Vera at some restaurant, or they usually also arranged like a dinner thing with the surf camp, so they invited everyone who wanted to join for dinner, and then we just like had some dinner somewhere, or they had some food at the rooftop at the surf camp, and then usually I had like a beer or a few beers or some wine with dinner. So yeah, that's that. But here, day 5, you can see it's a bit more expensive for food and activities, and that's because we decided to take a day off from surfing. We were both pretty exhausted. Like surfing 6 days straight is as a beginner, that's pretty rough. So we decided to do a day off. So we want to see those beautiful cliffs in Lagos, and we also had lunch in the old town of Lagos, also dinner, and I did do some shopping here. So I bought some jewelry for 25 euros. That's why this day was a bit more expensive, and of course since we stayed at the surf camp we still needed to pay like the whole thing, even though we did skip one day. The only activity we really did was the surf camp, which is understandable. We were at the beach the whole day, so there were not really anything else we could do. However, this week the surf camp actually arranged a free yoga classes for everyone who wanted to participate, so we did participate in that a few times as well, and that was really nice. It was a good like mix or combination with doing the surf camp and then doing the yoga. Anyway, that's that. So here, the first week, you can see it was a bit more expensive, and that's just because of the surf camp really. But then we moved to Lisbon, where it's more affordable, so to speak. So in Lisbon I spent 4 days, and as I said, I did choose to take the Flixbus from Lagos to Lisbon. It was about a 4-hour bus ride, and I also stayed at a hostel in Lisbon, so that was a bit more affordable compared to if I would have stayed at a hotel or like an Airbnb or something like that. So food and drinks here, it was like a daily average of 30 euros here as well. In Lisbon I actually did like less of fancier dinners, so I did more affordable dinners here, and in Lagos, me and Vera, we did go out for dinner and had a really good dinner with appetizers, with like maybe some dessert or wine and that kind of stuff, so that of course adds up. And in Lisbon I survived the whole day with about 30 euros a day for food, which is pretty good. So in Lisbon, the hostel that I stayed at offered breakfast for 5 euros, so I know that's that. And then I usually had some lunch somewhere and a small dinner if I was feeling hungry. And also, like during the rest of the trip in Portugal, I did do some work, so I was working from the hostels that I stayed at, and that's why also the costs remained quite low, because I did spend like the first half of the day doing nothing but work. So if I would have went to do some activities, then of course it adds up. So here on day 8, when I went from Lagos to Lisbon, I paid 11 euros for the Flixbus ride, And then on the second day in Lisbon, I chose to get a metro or public transportation tickets, which were €8 for 5, I think. And yeah, then there's not really anything else here. On the last day in Lisbon, I had to fill up my metro or public transportation ticket, so I did that for 150. But also here in Lisbon, I chose to do quite a lot of free activities, like walking around from one place to another, going to the LX Factor, which is free. There's a bunch of different shops and cute restaurants. But I just chose to not do any shopping, but instead just eat good food, which is what I like to do. Having a nice lunch at the MX factory. I have some tacos and also some guacamole with some tortilla chips, so very excited for that. I'm super hungry. I did do one free walking tour, but I of course paid a tip or tipped the guide, so that was also just a few euros. Otherwise, the hostel in Lisbon was €30 a night. It was a really nice hostel. I would highly recommend it. It was the We Hate Fucking Tourists hostel, and it was just really nice. A bit fancy, but like super good, and the social atmosphere was really nice. Or good as well. If you're going to Lisbon, I highly recommend watching this video where I explain the best things to do in Lisbon, and I also have some travel vlogs from Portugal, so I will link them, all the videos related to Portugal, down below in the description, so you can check them out on a later after this video. After Lisbon, I did go to Porto, where I also spent 4 days in total. The hostel in Porto was a bit more affordable. It was €22 a night. It was also a really good hostel. The only thing was that there wasn't a bunch of like people hanging around in the common rooms. The social atmosphere was a bit off, not the best, but like the hostel itself was really comfortable. This 15 and 15 here includes the bus ride from Lisbon to Porto, and also a Uber from the bus station to the hostel, which was like, it was a few kilometers, so I ain't gonna walk that. Then also I had some food on the first day. Food and drinks 36 and 60. This was the most expensive day in Porto, as we can see, and that's because I made a mistake. So I had dinner at this cozy like salad bar, and the salad was too small, so I actually had to have 2 dinners. The salad, which was way too small, and then I went to McDonald's to get a second dinner, because that's what I do. So 36.60, and I also had some wine and some snacks for the bus journey. Yeah. And the good thing about the hostel in Porto was that the breakfast was free or included in the price of the hostel, so I didn't need to pay anything for the breakfast, which was great. So here you can also see the daily spendings for Porto. So in Porto I did some shopping in the city center, so that's some of the activities here. Then I also went for a port wine tasting, which I highly recommend you do also if you're in Porto. If you're in Porto or if you're traveling to Porto, then I also suggest watching this video where it's my Porto travel guide. So, and again, if you want to see more videos from Porto and Portugal, I will link them down below. So activities in Porto included shopping, so I bought just a few pieces of clothing, and then I also did a free walking tour, which I paid the tip for, and then I also did the port wine tasting. Oh, I did also go to 2 cathedrals, which I paid the entrance for, so that's all in the activities here. On the last day in Porto, I went to see some friends that I met on the free walking tour the day before, and then they lived a bit more further away from the city, so I took the bus there to a restaurant close by, and then I also took the Uber back to my hostel, so that was almost about €10 for the whole transportation for the whole day. Alright, so let's see here. I have concluded everything. So as I said, the daily average spending for the whole Portugal trip for 2 weeks was about 90 euros, 89 and 22 cents. For activities, which includes the surf camp, which again was 508 euros. So all the activities in total for the 2 weeks was 637 euros and 20 cents, which I am gonna say I think that's pretty good, because that includes like all the activities, all the shopping, like extra unnecessary shopping I did, all the free walking tours where I tipped, of course, the port wine tasting, the surf camp and everything. So that's pretty good. And of course, when I stayed at the surf camp, I didn't have to spend anything on accommodation or breakfast or lunch, so that's a win-win situation right there. For food and drinks for the whole trip, I spent 435 euros and 2 cents, so a daily average of 29 euros for food. And then for accommodation, that's 208 euros in total, which averaged to 13 euros and 87 cents per day. And again, since we got accommodation from the surf camp, we didn't have to pay like separately for it, so it's like partly the food and the accommodation is counted for in the activities. So I think this is still a pretty realistic budget if you're thinking about going to Portugal, because like if you're not doing the surf camp, you still have to pay for accommodation and food, so it kind of, I would say it like divides up nicely, if you catch my drift. And for transportation in total was 58 euros and 10 cents, which averaged to 3 euros and 87 cents per day. And this includes like moving from Faro to Lagos, and then Lagos to Lisbon, and then Lisbon to Porto, and also the Ubers, the few Ubers I did, or Ubers and taxi rides and public transportation. So pretty happy about that. So this makes a total spend of 1,338 euros and 32 cents for 2 weeks, or actually 15 days, so a bit over 2 weeks in Portugal with the surf camp. So I'm pretty happy about that. Now, if we take a closer look on the different categories, I have also divided them into this nice graph or this pie chart. So as you can see, the activities was definitely the biggest chunk. As I said, if we take into consideration that the activities partly also includes the accommodation and food provided by the surf camp, it makes sense. Otherwise, food and drinks is the one of the bigger chunks as well, and that doesn't surprise me. I do like good food and I do like to have wine and beer, so not a surprise there. Then accommodation, 208 euros. Pretty happy about that actually. And then transportation, a small amount here, 58 euros. Now, I do have a few tips I want to share if you want to keep your budget low when you're traveling to Portugal, or if you're traveling anywhere in general. These are just a few quick tips. So these are some things that I could have done on this trip as well if I would wanted to have spent less money overall. So one thing is, of course, that you can cook your own food, especially in Europe. Eating out is usually not very affordable if you're not in Eastern Europe. But otherwise the food, eating out every day, can get quite expensive, which you see in my pie chart as well. It's not cheap. So if you want to cook your own food, that's one thing you can do to keep your costs down. And usually hostels have a good kitchen where you can cook your food, or if you're staying in Airbnbs, you can cook your own food, or you can also do more picnics and get some ready food from the grocery store and do that. And you don't need to cook your own food every day if you don't want to. You can just do it more frequently. I did it maybe 2 or 3 times on the whole trip, so that's why my costs for food and drinks was so high compared to the length of the trip. Another thing you can do is to travel off season. This is relevant really for every destination you go to. If you travel in the high season when everyone else is there, then you're gonna pay more. So if you want to get activities and accommodation, for example, a bit more affordable, I do recommend you travel off season. So I traveled to Portugal in September, which is a great time because it was sunny, it was warm, the weather was beautiful, and yeah, I think it's also a bit more affordable compared to like summer. So yeah, September is a good time to travel to Portugal. Also, I think October is great. You can also choose to stay at cheaper hostels. So the hostels I stayed at were, as I said, 22 euros a night and 30 euros a night. And these were quite in the mid-range. Yeah, in the mid-range really. They were really nice hostels, but I know that there were also cheaper, affordable, like more affordable options available. And especially if you travel off season, there will surely be more affordable options, and you can choose to stay at those if you want to save some money. And wherever you are in the world, you can always choose to use public transportation, because this will be more affordable than using taxis and Ubers for everywhere usually. So that's what I did here as well. I took the buses from one place to another. I used the metros and trams in cities, and I rarely used an Uber or like a taxi, only if there weren't really good public transportation options available, like late at night or going from the bus station in Porto to my hostel. So otherwise, I do really enjoy using public transportation, and it does keep my travel budget down. Now, how much can you expect to pay or spend in Portugal? So I think a good like mid-range budget for Portugal is 70 to 90 euros a day per person. This gives you good food, but you still have to watch out somewhat for your budget, and you also get like a comfortable hostel to stay at. You can do some activities like almost daily, but you don't do like very expensive activities or don't do like a lot of unnecessary shopping. If you want to do it cheaper, it's possible. It's definitely possible to do a budget trip to Portugal, in my opinion. You can even spend less than 50 euros a day. In this case, you have to just choose to stay at the cheapest hostels available. You can't really do any paid activities or a lot of them, or you can just choose to do like less expensive activities, and you can't really splurge on food. And in this case, I also recommend you cooking or making your own food more frequently instead of eating out all the time. And of course, if you want to stay at fancy hostels, eat at the more expensive restaurants and do more of expensive activities and do a lot of shopping, if that's like your jam, then go ahead, but just know that you of course have to spend more money. And in that case, you could go from like 100 euros a day to 1000 euros a day. You know, you can always spend as much as you would like. Like, you can spend a lot, but you can also make the money like last longer if you want to. But I really do hope you enjoyed this video. As I said, I will link all my Portugal videos down below, so you can watch my Portugal vlogs and also my Portugal travel guides to different destinations or the different cities down below. And yeah, that's it. I will see you in the next video, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Bye!